Ethan, what's your favorite part of Podpodcastcast?
I think my absolute favorite part of Podpodcastcast is just listening to the amazement of you whenever Honor brings up like certain podcasts. You're just like, oh my God, whoa, what? Genuine reactions. Like, I'm just like, you know what? This is great. This is like, yeah.
Well, you heard that, listener. This is great. So will this episode be okay? Welcome to Podpodcastcast. Hello, and welcome to Podpodcastcast. It's a podcast where we review other podcasts. I'm Sam.
And I'm Honor.
And today we're joined by Ethan. Hello, Ethan.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on.
Yeah.
We were just chatting about how awesome this podcast is. Ethan, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
You know, we've had many a different guests, and, you know, most of them are good. I say all of our guests have been excellent. I'm trying to think of what guess I should bother Brady. I feel like he did a mid-job. He phoned that episode in. The very first one. He phoned it in.
Yeah.
So
he came on and said he didn't listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know.
That was our first.
That was our first episode. And I got to say, I hate that guy. I would never see him ever again. That's a joke. Love Brady.
Cool.
But Ethan,
yes,
you're the creme de la creme. You're a serious pod head here. So serious that you seek out reviews of other podcasts.
Yes.
You've listened to Podpodcastcast before.
I have listened to Podpodcastcast. I have considered myself a PP head. So is that the official name? Are we bringing it back?
This is ridiculous.
Is this the name?
See, I thought, I was like, there's good odds that we can move on from PP heads. And
I'm bringing it back.
I also thought that.
I did my research. I did my research.
I feel like we're fighting a guerrilla war here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like from our perspective, as we make this podcast, it never pops in my mind, the PP head thing. No. And then every once in a while,
creeps up.
A fighter will jump out of the bushes and be like, PP heads, in an email or,
Yeah.
And I don't like that
I'm sorry.
The guests keep bringing it too,
It is all the guests.
Yeah.
It's only guests.
Would you say as a listener of Podpodcast that the term PP head resonates with you?
I think it's just a great term. I think it's funny. I think it's unique. I don't think a lot of people are calling themselves that.
No.
I don't think,
Not a bit.
Should that be our first piece of merch? Like a hat?
Yeah, I think it should.
It just says PP head?
Yeah, Comic Sans right on the top. Just
Comic Sans could be pretty awesome.
Yeah. Or Papyrus. One of the two.
Ooh.
Both great characters from Undertale.
Yeah.
Listener, if you want the PP head merch, email in. I hate PP head until people start buying stuff for it, so I'll change my tune.
Yeah.
But you know what I won't change my tune about? My podcast for today.
Whoa.
My podcast for today is Good Hang with Amy Poehler. I was rooting around in the Drunk Drawer podcast the other day, and I found a new podcast that was actually at the very top. I didn't have to root very far.
Oh.
There was a new trending podcast, which is Amy Poehler's podcast. You guys know who Amy Poehler is?
Yes.
She's a comedian. She was on SNL, starred in Parks and Rec, great show. And so now she has succumbed to the great Hollywood pandemic.
Yeah.
She's made a podcast.
Yeah.
The siren
Pod-demic.
song.
It's
The
true.
pod-demic.
The pod-demic.
The pod-demic. Can we coin that? Can we take? That be?
I think you guys can take it. Take it.
Yeah.
Welcome, PP heads, to the pod-demic underground. Give you all your news about how the great podcast conspiracy. So she started a podcast. Amy Poehler says it's not just for money. I like Amy Poehler. This is a fine podcast. I question this motive. But so the premise of the podcast is almost very much the same as like every other celebrity podcast. It's just her talking with other celebrities.
Okay.
Really Good Hang is kind of trying to emphasize this idea of I'm just hanging out with people and I'm just going to talk to them and just kind of see what's up. So there's like no premise beyond this, right?
Yeah.
It's not like Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend where it is an interview podcast. Like in theory, it's an interview podcast, but she's trying to make it like cash and laid back.
I just feel like if it's anything like the setup right now, like that feels like the most uncasual.
This podcast?
No, that podcast. the Amy Poehler
I thought you were calling this the most uncasual, upside podcast, which I think is accurate. I mean, we did, we brought you in here.
Yeah.
And we didn't say anything, and then I just pressed the big red button and we started recording.
Exactly. Lights came on then with a flash.
I said, "Speak, boy."
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah.
No, I mean,
yeah. There's like a van that got me. I don't even know what happened. I just ended up here.
Yep.
we just like hollered out the window. You like podcast, kid? All right. It's not like not casual, but especially as she's starting out, she doesn't have any interview experience that I know about, and so it does feel a little bit like we're figuring out how to make a podcast right now. So I haven't listened to all the episodes since they come out. I listened to a few. It starts with Tina Fey, Amy Poehler's longtime collaborator. Was that a head shake? Was that a no?
That was like
obvious.
Like that's
Yes.
like of course it's gonna be Tina.
Very
Queen.
Tina Fey is very funny, then followed up by Martin Short and some other funny people. And then I also really enjoyed the Jack Black episode. But that's like a lot of these celebrity interview podcasts. The function of how much I enjoy them is dependent on the guest. I really like Jack Black.
Yeah.
Therefore, the Jack Black episode was really good for me, right? So, but kind of, especially in the first episode, she kind of talks about trying to figure it out. But as they go on, they still have this segment, which is getting on like a Zoom call with a bunch of known celebrities or maybe slightly below like A-list celebrities.
Okay.
So B-list, you would say?
They're on some lists. It's impossible to tell. Amy Poehler gets on this phone call with these people and is like, hey, I'm going to interview Tina Fey. And what should I ask her about? Which is sometimes kind of interesting. A lot of times she's talking to very funny people and they're like on their day off. And so they're not being like super funny. So it's a little funny to hear like a comedian be like, yeah, you should ask her about her dad. I heard they had a really strong relationship, and I've always wondered what that was like.
Kermit was asking?
Yeah, it was Kermit.
Oh, okay.
I think you should ask Martin Short if you like taking all my jokes. Yeah, and so, you get to see kind of a little bit of other side of these celebrities, but also this like opening segment also serves to just like bring in more celebrities. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then just kind of talk with them for a little bit. It's a strange
amalgamation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something kind of appended on to the front of what is otherwise a very familiar format. But I mean, on the whole, Amy Poehler is pretty funny. Not that she's like, this is a stand-up comedy show. I mean, she's just talking. But she also brings on really funny guests. And, like Martin Short, if you've ever listened to him or saw an interview with him or seen, his comedy, he's very quick-witted. And so the interview with him is a really good time, right? And he's making Amy laugh, and they're having a good time. And then, sometimes that comedy will take a break for something more intimate and be like, what was it like when you were growing up in Vancouver or whatever? So the show doesn't really feel the need to be a laugh a minute, which is fine. I don't really care about comedians or I don't really care about celebrities super deeply.
Yeah.
Dude, they're going to come after you.
They might email in. They might email in.
They might email in all comedians. We found another group to alienate.
If the comedians email in, I'll be so happy. If they say some really mean jokes about me, I don't know. They might find my insecurities.
Yeah. I'm hosting the roast of Sam.
You've been doing it for a year. I feel like I'm a little over it at this point,
Yeah.
So I'm not that into celebrities for the celebrity's sake. Some people want to keep up with the Kardashians. I don't really care. I do like comedians. I like to, laugh. So those more somber kind of intimate moments, not like it's dire, but those aren't a whole lot for me. So there's not going to be a lot to my review because there's, I think, not a lot to this podcast. Maybe I've listened to enough of these that I don't feel like there's a lot to talk about.
That's what I was about to say, is that you've listened to a lot of celebrity interview podcasts where it kind of just seems like a celebrity feels the need to have a podcast.
Yeah, but it's also like, I don't know, a little less distinct than some of the other ones, right? Like I said, Conan O'Brien needs a friend. Like the personalities of the people on that show who stay there episode after episode are very funny. You get invested. He's a great interviewer.
Yeah.
I started, maybe I'll finish an episode of Las Culturistas, which has Bowen Yang and the other guy. Hey, this is an interview. I can't be expected to know their names.
Yeah.
They have a very specific angle. They want to talk about culture and like movies and TV shows and stuff. Whereas this, I think it is very much like, a big crop of podcasts, and it relies on Amy Poehler's fame
and her connections to famous people. And I'm not trying to, I'm sure Amy Poehler will listen to this.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that it's bad because of that, or there's no creativity there, or there's nothing of entertainment value, but it doesn't really set itself apart either, and is not the funniest celebrity interview podcast I've listened to. So that's it. I listened to a good few episodes, and I was like, this podcast feels like, I don't know, something that's really plain. Feels like a plain burger.
Yeah.
It's just burger, bun.
Nothing
You know.
burger.
It's not nothing. You'll get some meat. You'll get some sustenance.
Cardboard burger.
Cardboard burger. If you really like someone who, like Tina Fey doesn't do a lot of interviews, but you like her on podcasts or whatever, great. Look up Tina Fey and this podcast will come up, but I don't know if there's a lot else there. So to me, this is a solid 2.5. It's not offensive. It's not exceptional. It's okay.
Perfectly
It's just
average.
another hat in the ring, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get your fix of celebrity interview podcasts.
Come get your content.
Yeah.
Come get your content.
Yeah.
Honor, what content shall you be discussing, Séjour?
What?
That's French for today.
Oh, I took Spanish.
I guess aujourd'hui is French for today. What podcast are you talking about today, Honor?
Today, I'm going to be talking about another Dropout TV podcast. Another season of Dimension 20.
Time out.
Uh-huh.
How could we drop out TV if it's a podcast?
Well, as I've said before, these are all... Technically, there's video that can go along with these, but I put them on and I listen to them. And they know that people listen to them in audio format because they offer them in audio format.
Ethan, where do you stand on the visual aspect of podcasts? Because I was talking to somebody just the other day, and they're like, I only listen if there's a visual.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's two different fields we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And I think if there is a visual to the podcast, at that point it's a video essay.
Whoa. Are you saying, okay, whoa.
It depends. It's entirely a video at that point. And if
Okay.
it's more of like, if it's like a true crime podcast and they are just telling you the facts
Sure.
and you're learning about something, or a
Okay.
history podcast,
Yeah.
it's a video essay then.
I'm following you.
I think
That's
I
where we are.
agree.
What about Joe Rogan? That's
That's just a video. That is just a video
on
interview.
top of a podcast?
If you're listening to it on Spotify, Apple Music, podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, that's a video.
Yeah. Here's my...
It's the platform.
Whoa.
It's
okay.
the platform.
We were
Okay, yeah.
got deeper in than I was ready for.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
I seek not to understand you.
Oh,
I think my take has always been that if the video becomes necessary to follow what's happening, then that's not a podcast anymore. If they're calling themselves a video podcast at that point, that's not real. This is just a video.
yeah.
So you've brought another season of Dimension 20,
Yes.
big D&D podcast, which you love very much. You've
love
talked,
very
I think,
much.
about 2 other seasons.
I believe so.
And so now we've got a separate, self-contained Dungeons and Dragons story.
Yep.
What's this one about?
Except this one is not Dungeons and Dragons. One thing that is really...
Did you? Was that relief? You're like, oh my god, thank you.
I don't know how many more D&D podcasts. I can't listen to D&D. I must play it. I
Yes.
can't watch it.
The
I must,
itch.
Yeah,
The
I can't. There's like certain things where you have to do the thing. You can't
Right.
just like watch someone do it.
I totally understand.
You know,
But Honor
This
has
is
no
fair.
such compulsion.
I have no such compulsion. I listen to a lot.
honor that.
Thanks.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
I'll forgive you.
Thank you.
But yeah, I love tabletop RPG, game, whatever, actual play, podcast. And this one I find particularly interesting because they created their own tabletop RPG system,
Okay.
which I think was really fun.
I am Thuthbithith.
Okay.
So what's the setting? It's not
Yeah.
ye olde fantasy?
Yeah, so going back to the beginning, this podcast starts... I think it's integral to know that this is an extremely funny cast of comedian, actors, role players who are on this show. The star-studded lineup here: Brennan Lee Mulligan is a famed DM who is running this game. Isabella Rowland is there. That is incredible comedian who is also his wife, so they're really funny together. Alex Sonzia, I believe is how it's said, but they're also extremely funny, have been on a couple campaigns. Jacob Wysocki, such a personality. He's so funny.
I don't know most of the people that are on the Dropout TV streaming service, but I do know Jacob Wysocki.
Yes.
I think I said that name wrong. Very funny.
You said it correct. He's very funny, big personality. These are a lot of big personalities. Ify Wadiwe, another big personality. Ali Beardsley, big name in tabletop role-playing, mostly D&D, but because of being on Dimension 20 a lot and being an extremely funny comedian who takes big swings all the time. And Renka Shankar, who is another comedian, comedy writer. I think this was either her first or second campaign she was on, but also does a lot of comedy. Like I said, these are all a bunch of big personalities. These are people who come out and make crazy swings, and the campaign they're playing in is called Never Stop Blowing Up, which is extremely apt. This starts in, I believe, like a 90s, or no, it's in pretty much present day, but this is set in a failing, like, sort of blockbuster, basically, like, movie shop, where no one's buying, like, movie cassettes or DVDs anymore, so the shop is going under. And it's all a bunch of characters who are, like, there's a couple of the kids who work there, and they're, like, knowing that they're not going to have a job in a couple weeks. There's a lady who's the mall cop who's around, who is, like, takes her job really seriously, but, like, there's not any cop stuff to do in this mall. There's this guy who's the older, like, sort of deadbeat uncle of one of these kids. Just a bunch of ragtag people around this movie store. There's then this movie that gets returned because since they're closing, everyone's late fees are being followed up on. They're like, anyone who has an overdue movie, you got to give it back to us because we're closing forever. So this one guy who's had this movie checked out called Never Stop Blowing Up forever, brings it back, is weird about it. Then they all get pretty much Jumanji'd into this movie. This is the thing this guy has been doing for the years he's had this cassette.
He's been Jumanjiing?
He's been Jumanjiing.
Is he Jumanjiing others or just himself?
Just himself.
A serial Jumanger?
Yeah, just himself over and over again. I think there's mention that he brought one other person in there, but it's like, if you die in the movie, you die in real life.
Oh.
Okay, so what is the movie about then that these heroes must navigate?
The movie is just, imagine for me every action movie.
Okay.
All of them. Never stop blowing up.
Gotcha.
Spies, explosions, car chases, cops, detectives, all of it.
This sounds awesome.
Yeah. It is awesome. This campaign is awesome because they all get sucked in, and all of these random sort of deadbeat characters get put into the bodies of different, like, action heroes.
Yeah.
So there's, like, the deadbeat uncle gets put into the body of the, like, stereotypical, like, sexy burglar Catwoman
This is
type.
just Jumanji.
It's just Jumanji, but insane.
Do they have The Rock in it? Is The Rock in this?
Kind of. One of the kids does get put into the body of,
Dwayne Johnson?
I'm trying to remember. It's like a play on Vin Diesel. Vic Ethanol.
Vic Ethanol.
Just
Hell
big man, drive car fast. I forgot one of my favorite characters, who is the extremely old woman who would do, like, the bookkeeping for the movie store and did it all by hand, never used a calculator. She gets put into the body of the most grimy, greasy, like, teenage hacker kid.
That rocks. That's awesome.
With all the technology that she doesn't understand.
And so I've never listened to Dimension 20. It's several episodes, right?
Yes. So this is a 10-episode series, and each episode is 2-ish hours.
Okay.
Sometimes a little longer.
So it's like...
It might be more like 3. But only 10 episodes. It's fairly self-contained.
And so they save the day and they get out of Jumanji world?
They save the day. There's this whole plot that ends up unfolding. They have to figure out kind of all the things that are happening in the movie of, like, these governments are working with these governments and the mafia is involved and the car chase guys are involved with the mafia and the spies are, there's a secret agent, there's double agent, double cross, and all the things. And they all have these, it's like these items that are associated with their character, and some of them get lost, and then they have to get them back in order to escape the movie and not be trapped there forever.
This sounds rad. It sounds like
It's
what if we
truly
just
rad.
made the most tropey, cliche
Yes.
action movie D&D experience?
And that's absolutely what they did, which gets back into the system for this campaign that they played, which is not D&D, is also called Never Stop Blowing Up. They made it.
They got the
Everything in
one
this-
good name. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
They get the one good name, you might as well use it. And so everyone's stats start at a D4, the smallest size of dice.
Oh.
And so whenever you roll a check to make it, if you hit the largest number on the dice, you blow up. Your dice explodes.
Okay.
That's what it's called in the gaming world and also thematically for this. And then you keep that larger die size for forever.
So
Your
you
stat
go
is
from
now
a 4-sided dice to a
Mhm.
6-sided dice to an 8, 10, 12.
all the way
20.
up to 20. Yeah. So that also means if you're doing more things in a particular realm, like if you're always sneaking around, you're going to get better at sneaking naturally because you're going to be rolling more of those checks. And there's also involved with that some systems with if you fail a roll, then you get like a point that you can use later.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so then there's these different abilities that they can get. At the end of every episode, they can either use those points in the episode to upgrade rolls, blow up their dice, etc. Or if they keep them, then at the end of the episode, they can buy either upgrades for their own character, or there are communal upgrades that they can get for the whole team to do awesome, like, team moves, team montage, power up.
This must tickle your gamer brain
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah. It's really good. And all of these people are so funny.
Sure, it's doing both. You're like
Mhm.
I'm here for funny people, and also, I mean, this might be the perfect thing for you because
Yeah.
you're like, I like making Dungeons and Dragons, but
I'm
different.
making games.
Yes, yes.
I
How
like
would,
to make a game.
but like, how do you think it compares to the other Dimension 20 seasons?
I think this one, for me, it stands out in a way that's really nice in that there's not another season that feels really like this, which I think Dimension 20 does really well of keeping this an anthology series where they do a lot of things that feel very distinct. But Never Stop Blowing Up in particular feels really unique in that, partially because they have a lot of personalities on that aren't in kind of the core cast that is on a lot. They have this new system that is very tailored for the thing they're doing of bam, pow, like big moves when cool stuff happens. And just, it is truly this non-stop, like, action movie. Let's do all of the biggest, craziest things we can. There's, just to list a couple of the crazy things that happen. At one point, a character spills a barrel of beans on the jungle floor and makes it shiny enough to convince a fighter pilot in this jet attacking them that instead of beans, there's more sky on the ground. And they
Gotcha.
fly into
Okay,
the beans
okay.
and crash and die.
There must be a lot of beans then, I feel like.
So a lot of
Just
shiny.
in this jungle.
Okay.
There was a big
Just
barrel of beans.
And then there's just like one spot
Yeah.
painted white.
This guy was like,
and
if
Yeah.
I fly
this
through
is-
it.
If I fly through it, there will be more sky.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of, I forget what it's called, but there's some other RPG systems that are like, let's just do all the craziest stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which reminds me very much of that.
Yeah, because the point is you're getting Jumanji'd into a movie and kind of anything can happen because it's a movie.
Yeah.
And, like, that's part of the actual story itself is that this one guy kept Jumanji'ing himself into this movie because he could do, like, anything
Yeah.
that he wanted. So then, like, it's not even that far-fetched when Jack Manhattan, one of the characters, stabs someone on the tip of the Empire State Building.
Gotcha. I thought you were just going to say this a whole premise. It's not that far-fetched. It could happen.
Yeah.
It could happen.
I've been standing in front of my TV for years, and one day it's going to suck me in there.
Suck me in there.
I'm still caught up on the guy who has been Jumanjiing himself into the movie over and over again.
I don't-
I'm
Yeah.
like, are you the same guy over and over again, or are you someone different?
He's
each
getting
He's
time?
the
out.
same guy.
I don't.
Okay, at that point, like I feel like after 2 times, I'm bored. I already know what's gonna happen.
But he's kind of one of the big head honchos in the middle of everything. And like I said, there's all these different kind of plots going on with, like, the CIA is involved. There's these independent detectives. There's the burglar spies, there's all these different things. So he talks about he would come in and then he would go ally with one of them this time and then go
okay.
mess with these people the other time. And so he just could find infinite things to do. I also have to point out this man was like 70, 80 years old. So he's like, I can just keep doing this forever.
Yeah.
Okay, but at that point, why return the movie? Is he afraid about the late fees?
I mean, like, listen, Blockbuster late fees used to get some people.
That
Genuinely,
is true.
genuinely, they would get some people.
This guy was like, I could be president of Earth,
Yeah.
but I don't want to pay $5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Honor, sounds like you like this pod a lot.
I do.
What would you rate it? This is a good pod?
This is a good pod. I think truly anyone could enjoy this pod because it's just extremely enjoyable. There's game parts of it that are really fun. There's a couple sort of heartfelt, touching moments, especially of the characters who are like under the action hero sort of bodies they've been put into. It's extremely funny throughout. There's never a dull moment. Like they're always going. So I would recommend this to like anyone. I would say this is, I want to say something crazy and say it's like a 4.5. It's gotta be.
That sounds good. I
At
thought you were going to
least.
say this is a 5. I thought you were going to say
I
this is
really thought
a
about
pinnacle
it.
pod.
I really thought about close to 5. It's very good. There's truly so little that I would have to say against it. It's produced extremely well. The cast is phenomenal. It's so fun and funny.
Hell yeah.
It's awesome and it's rad.
And things don't stop blowing up.
And they never stop blowing up.
And you know who else is in Ethan.
I know. We're about to take a whole 180 from
I'm
fun.
so ready because
Is this a podcast first? What I'm doing right now? Pulling out
pulling out a little notebook?
the
I
little
think
notebook?
so. I think
Yeah.
other people have had notes, but you feel almost like a detective, like a gumshoe.
Almost.
And you're like,
Almost.
so where were you on the night of the 31st?
Yeah.
You know, I feel like
We're gonna double dip on the phone.
Oh
and
my
the-
gosh.
And the pod.
Whoa.
so prepared. I'm actually quaking.
This guy's quaking. I think I said that last episode. I think you
yeah.
keep quaking.
Dude, I am shaking. What's up, Ethan? What are you
Okay.
so prepared for?
So we're gonna take a total 180 from fun celebrity interviews, from fun blowing up adventures. We're going into the true crime and just unsolved mystery and just genuinely like horrible event.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah. So we have late nights with Nexpo.
Okay.
And so for the listeners who are familiar with the true crime YouTube scene, Nexpo does a lot of like unsolved mystery, a lot of kind of like disturbing media. And so now he's made a podcast. The pod-demic has struck again.
The
we are
The next victim.
exactly. It's
Gotcha.
Next Victim. And so this is his podcast. And I think kind of just going into it, they're about 40-minute episodes.
Okay.
It's not like your typical true crime where it's like two people back and forth bantering about, some dude killed his wife and
Sure.
then, ended up in the Bahamas type. This is purely just what happened and following the events as they kind of unfold.
Is it like a dramatic narrative? Because, there's this true crime like tendency to like tell the story like Susan walked home, clicky, clacky, clicky. Like, or is he just like, hey, so there's this crime and then goes through all the facts, or kind of what's the angle there?
I think the main angle is, it's kind of like you said, it's like Susan's walking home and then you kind of just hear like there's sometimes sounds that come in.
Gotcha.
For a couple of these episodes, there will be chattering. Oh, we're in the main hall of this building.
Gotcha.
And then you hear like chattering noises. So it kind of tries to immerse you
Following.
as if you're in there.
Okay.
And I think one of the best ones for immersing was one that was called I'm Going to Disappear. And it's a story about, in the 1980s, a little girl in Toronto goes into an elevator to go to like the pool on her apartment lobby and disappears. Just
Whoa.
gone. Yeah. And so I think kind of the side note is the way to really get into true crime is if you have a really soothing voice. And
So he's not
Yeah.
spooking ya.
no, he kind of creates this tension whenever he's talking about some of these stories because you really just feel like you kind of start to get a little stressed because you're like, oh my God, like where is she? Like where is like, like
He gets you invested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of follows a different path almost from like typical where it's like, here's what happens, here's the events, now let's start going into the timeline. You go in as it unfolds. So you don't know what's going to come
got it.
next sometimes. You're kind of just like sitting through this whole timeline and it really kind of just paints this like picture because you're there as it unfolds and it gets you thinking. You're like, what did happen? Who was it? You learn like in the story,
got
like,
it.
you know, the wife is separated from her husband. Did the husband take her? You know, was it a neighbor? Was it just like someone, you know, you start building
You're trying
this,
to piece
like,
it together.
you start building
at the
this
same
web,
time.
yes.
Yeah.
And then you kind of just like, it goes, you know, by the time you get to the end of the story, it's usually not a happy ending.
Sure.
It never is,
Yeah.
you know. It's really like depressing stories,
Right.
you know, and these are like people's lives. And so I think that's like the other thing is that it's not, especially in stories where there are like victims, it's usually not from the perspective of the perpetrator. It's usually
Sure.
from the victim side.
Sure.
You know, you want to honor the victim instead of, you know, talking
Right.
up the perp.
Mm-hmm.
So this is you kind of hit on one of like the I think the
Mhm.
big I don't know conflicts, but one of the big key things that in true crime
Mhm.
is that true crime is on one hand, I mean, excellent entertainment, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there's so many true crime podcasts.
Exactly.
When I talk to someone about what podcast they listen to, a lot of times they're like, "Oh yeah, you know, Crime Junkie or
Yeah.
you know, Garbage Slayers or whatever."
Mhm.
So it's great entertainment, but on the other hand, it's really tragic.
Mhm.
Like somehow that taps into like what we as people,
Yeah.
you know, you know, I think that's like a little bit of the base human. Like
Mhm.
you want to know what's going on in the village over. Like, oh,
Yeah.
that happened to that guy. So something about it being real,
Mhm.
but it's also so dramatic. You know,
Mhm.
these crazy experiences
Yeah.
that people go through. So that, yeah, I think that's so interesting.
Mhm.
But how do you feel about that with this podcast? Do you feel like it's handled well, or it's like
I think
it's
it's
par for the course, or
I think it's different in a sense that just even the sound design is very simple. It's not over the top, but it's enough to have you kind of paint that picture. Just like going through the timeline, my top 3 episodes so far. There's only like 10 episodes out right now.
okay?
So this is new.
I was
This is
just-
a fresh podcast.
Do you know when it started?
Probably March
Okay.
is when it
So-
started.
wow.
Rough timeline March. Yeah. But he's been making videos for years now. So like he's
Gotcha.
YouTuber first, now podcast.
Okay,
kind of
okay.
deal. And he does both. And so kind of like my top 3 recommendations is Abandoned by God, I'm Going to Disappear, and then The Deadliest Song. Which are
Whoa.
like 3 insane titles.
That's
you know what I
crazy.
mean?
Yeah.
Can we have like a teaser? Like
Okay.
what's going on in
So
those?
Abandoned by God talks about a New York state school,
Okay.
which the state school systems back in the day were where you'd send disabled children
Oh, okay.
and they would be cared for. This was before like we had all these programs and
Yes.
like, you know, we treated them like people, which
right.
is like,
yes.
Yeah.
So it's already going to be kind of
yeah, it's
dark.
already depressing.
Yeah, it's already
we're starting off depressed.
sure.
And I think what's great about that one is they bring up people and then they always somehow come back in some way.
Okay.
And then you don't learn about it just from the victims, but you learn about it from like the parents too that would send their kids there because they were genuinely told they could send their child here, they would get better. But then, you know, the school, you know, they never really like reported back in. You know what I mean? They never like
Right.
reported what they're doing.
So is there like a lot of neglect? Is that the
There was neglect, overcrowding, medical experiment.
Whoa.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah, some crazy stuff.
So this is a little more than true crime.
It's kind of crazy.
So when you started, you said like disturbing stories, but kind of like I'm thinking, is cryptids up the alley, or is it like
This is like real events
Okay.
that happen. So we're kind of outside of cryptids. There
Gotcha.
there is an episode about a vampire panic,
sure?
but there was no vampire.
Gotcha.
You know, these are like 2 crazy dudes like battling it out. Like
There were 2 dudes.
like there were
Battling it
2
out?
dudes. So battling it out, by battling out, I mean they would like have almost like speech offs and be like, I'm gonna discredit you by proving I am the one that knows where the vampire is, and the other dude's like, you're insane. But then like there was some craziness.
So it's
involved.
not like the supernatural podcast where they're talking about aliens.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it is maybe a step outside true crime.
It is a step outside true crime. I think there's definitely stories here that are more true crime, and there's some that are more disturbing and like historical.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then there are others that are kind of just like, again, 2 crazy dudes who one believes he's a wizard, the other one's like, I can see the dead. And then they kind of like, this is definitely an exaggeration of that story. But
These
like,
guys sound awesome. I don't know.
Yeah.
You
But,
piqued my
like,
interest, exaggeration or not.
Yeah.
and then it's kind of a little bit of everything, you know?
Yeah.
Like you have a little bit of true crime, a little bit of disturbing, a little bit of some wacky stuff going on. And like each episode I think is great. They're all beautifully produced. The one thing that always gets me is in the beginning of podcasts, they never say they have ads. And I'm like, oh guys, quick ad break. They just go right into it. So it always starts out with ads.
Is it the okay?
And so you got to like skip like 30 seconds.
Gotcha.
in,
Yeah.
I thought you were
know.
saying that like in the middle of this very immersive experience.
That's also what I thought you were saying.
No,
They're like,
which thank
and
God.
That scared me.
I'm like, thank God. No, because
Yes.
there's some I'd listen to. There's another great one. We won't talk about National Park in the Dark. True crime.
That's a podcast.
That's a
oh,
podcast.
about national
True
parks.
crime
You told me
in
about
the
this.
podcast. Exactly. and they'll just cut halfway between a story to like be like, go to Panera, you know, try the new sandwich or something. I'm like, you cannot do that to me.
You're hurting me.
That's the real scare.
I'm like knife in my heart. But no, ads at the beginning. And then kind of the other one, I'm Going to Disappear, was the one about the little girl that disappeared. The deadliest song is like Lavender Town. If you're familiar with the Pokemon song Lavender Town that would make kids like kill themselves.
Whoa,
Put
I didn't know that.
1930s. There was a song called Gloomy Sunday, and it was the Hungarian like suicide song. And so it goes through the timeline of the creation of the song, from the song's producers and composers creating the song, all the way through the effects of the song being like played and aired. And it's an insane ride. It's like a wild ride. And it's kind of this odd thing because like the person that created this, no money, like he was like, this is my like last kind of recording thing I'm going to do. And the love of his life left him type deal. So he made this song called Gloomy Sunday, and it got really famous. And then people would like write in their like suicide letters that this song was like, you know, or like even people just like hearing the song. Yeah, like
This
some
is
insane stuff.
You know what this is like? This is like Magnus Archives.
I thought you were going to say
This
that.
is like Magnus Archives, but real. That
is also
Ethan,
what
that's
I
a
thought
podcast.
about.
It's a
There's an
horror fiction
episode-
podcast.
Yeah.
There's an episode about a song that makes people like bleed and die.
But that's like, it feels like that's the premise of this podcast, is to talk about those spooky things that the Magnus Archives hits. But like, if you need the rush of it being real, you know, as I inject myself with my invisible syringe.
For the viewers who don't have like the imagination, you know, Sam is injecting imaginary heroin into his veins. As we speak.
That's just it's just the true crime hit that I need.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then that story kind of I can't spoil it, but it comes full circle, and it's just like, you're just like, what happened? You're like, like, you know, comes full circle, and it's kind of an insane ending to that one. So those are my top 3.
That seems like a crazy top 3. It's also crazy that the vampire wizard episode did not make the top 3, and there's only 10 episodes. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on because each episode is different. There's no like theme, except these are stories that you'd never really hear. Like, you know, a lot of people will talk about like Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, but these are like the out there ones. These aren't really being touched much.
They're like almost too crazy to be real. It feels like that's wild.
Yeah, there are some that are like, you know, some avid true crime and disturbing media people were like, okay, I definitely know this one. Like, this one's gonna.
Sure. You're like, I heard that one before.
Yeah.
Is this keeping you up at night? Is it that spooky, or are you just like, man, that's fascinating? Because that's what I hear from the true crime girlies. Is they're like, I just think it's so interesting.
I'm really glad I could be a true crime girly.
And
this is huge.
This is a
huge honor.
They'll feel represented today.
No, this is more like this is going to sound horrible because I don't want to make light about these stories, but it kind of like, if I'm having too much of a good day, sometimes I need to be like grounded. You know?
I've not had that experience, but maybe I'm just not, my life isn't as awesome.
It's like
as
a
yours.
grounding thing, because then like whenever I think of like, oh man, my life sucks, and I got to think like, you know, there are 2 wizards battling it out right now. You know, maybe I don't want to be on the other end of that spectrum, or like, you know, like, some really horrible things happen. Like, I can make it through another day of engineering. You know what I mean? Like, I can make do.
That's kind of awesome.
It also just like tickles my brain, because then it kind of gets me thinking.
Well, because you're trying to figure out who it is. It's the whodunit.
Like,
I mean, that's a classic formula from like the past 100 years.
Yeah.
We all want to know who
exactly.
What would you rate this pod, Ethan? We use a 0 to 5 scale here, but you could even go up to as many as, 9 if you like. Yeah,
that's huge.
Wow.
It's big. It's huge. 0 through 9.
Well, it doesn't have.
That's a program.
It could.
I'm sorry, I had to bring it.
He brought it.
I'll believe you.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. What do you think on this pod?
I think it's a 4.8.
Whoa.
We're going high. We're going high.
This
is
huge.
High. This is. I think, the sound design, just kind of how the stories take place, really just like how well produced this is.
Wow.
As well. I think my only criticism is there's not enough episodes.
Yeah, it's so new. That's why it's like I'm so shocked that you're giving it a 4.8, because it's so new.
Exactly. I think.
But you've already burned through all of it, I'm sure.
Oh, it's every Wednesday. Every Wednesday it updates. I'm listening to it.
I'm like,
give me
refresh.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's sick.
Yeah. And it's really just a great podcast, and it's under Ballin Studios, who true crime and like the strange, mysterious story listeners.
Sure.
Mr. Ballin is a huge name in that. He has an entire plethora of podcasts about like strange stories and with other creators too. He produces this one. It's under his studio.
Got it.
And all of the ones under his catalog are just like really well done and just really interesting as well. So those are also really
So if
good
you like
ones.
this one,
Definitely check out the other ones.
right? You can't get more of this these
Mhm.
episodes, but there's a deeper place to go.
Yeah,
Man, I hope one day someone calls me Mr. Ballin.
that would be cool.
That would be cool.
That'd be cool.
That would be.
Ethan,
Yes.
Epic Pod.
Thank you.
Looks like we got to skedaddle out of this
I
studio.
know.
So, real quick, you're a listener of Podpodcast, right?
Yes.
What would be your 5-star review for Podpodcast?
Ooh, 4.5. We need.
That's
more-
not no. Whoa! It's a 5-star review. Is that the content? Like the
4.5 out of 5.
No.
Wait, what are you saying?
You're
I'm so sorry.
required to leave a 5-star
If you're
review.
listening to us on Apple Podcasts or
I'm on
Spotify, and I'm sure you've left a 5-star
sorry.
review. I know you have.
I have.
Okay.
As all listeners must.
So what is the comment that you would write? Because
Oh.
it physically won't work if you try to put in less than 5 stars, listener.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but is the comment 4.5, which is totally legal?
5 stars. Rise of the PP heads. That is the comment. That is the comment.
Awesome.
Get out the merch. Start the Patreon, people.
It starts today.
Start the fan merch.
Dang.
Well,
It's happening.
perfect. If you're a PP head and you want merch, send us an email. Leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this. Give us a follow so you know when the next episode comes out. And thank you for listening. Ethan, thank you for listening and for joining us.
Thank you for
Yes.
having
Bringing
me.
an
It's
amazing
huge.
pod. This
Thank
was
you.
a lot of fun.
It was.
was.
Thank you.
Honor. Thank you for potting with me as always.
Thank you for potting with me.
Ow.
That sucks.
And until the next time we do a bad high five, ta-ta!